Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, we had a little special intro tonight for the podcast because for the first time ever on the show, we are talking about the Evil Dead franchise. That intro was provided by the great band Ice Nine Kills. They do a lot of horror movie music, and that is their song Ex Mortis from their album The Silver Scream 2. Welcome to Horrorwood, and that is a song based, of course, on the Evil Dead, which felt pretty appropriate to do that for the tonight.
Oh yeah,
talk about the Evil Dead.
no, that's awesome. I love bands that are like obsessed with horror movies. We got to get Churches on the band because they're another one. Their last album was like actually horror themed, right?
Yeah. Final Girl was one of their songs, and yeah, they were big. That whole album was way horror themed, and yeah, I
love bands that do that.
Their last two albums were just all horror songs. They have songs based on Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and Halloween and Candyman and Psycho. And yeah, I've seen them in concert. They put on an incredible show on top of just being like incredible musicians and an amazing band. But yeah, that was their song. So when they actually do that song Ex Mortis in concert, they have the back of their video screen looks like the cabin from the Evil Dead, and then Spencer Charnas, who's the lead singer, he comes out dressed as Ash with the shirt on, and he has the chainsaw in his hand when he sings Ex Mortis. So I felt like it was appropriate, since we're talking about Evil Dead for the first time, a little special intro with the Nice Nine Kills song to welcome us in. And yeah, tonight is the first night we're actually ever talking about Evil Dead, and we're going to talk about Evil Dead Rise. We're going to get into that film in a second, but I want to open the show, Patrick, and talk about our relationship with Evil Dead, because this is one of the most beloved horror franchises in history. You know, when you talk about, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Scream, certain franchises that have like a rabid fan base, Evil Dead does have that. Evil Dead has a massive following. One of the original kind of horror comedies, but not films necessarily made to be a horror comedy. It just was kind of goofy, and so it became a horror comedy. But there is just a rabid fan base. I mean, Bruce Campbell's career was based around Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2.
I would dare to say that maybe the Evil Dead franchise has the most rabid fan base. I think I'm really like racking my brain right now in terms of like street level, like grassroots participation. I feel like the Evil Dead people beat everybody else. And it's like, it's permeated throughout my entire life. Obviously when you start as a little kid, and you and I talk about this all the time, we used to walk through the video store, the VHS cover for Evil Dead 2, which was the skull with the eyes, right? Like iconic, right? Super memorable. And then there's I used to go to midnight showings of Evil Dead 2. Like you would just do that. We would just all get together and go to these showings, because we had like this place called the Ken Cinema, which they were like one of the last places in town like using the old ArcLight projector. So you'd go there, and it was old school theater. People go see it, and you'd scream at the movie theater or at the screen all night, and they knew all the lines. And I remember going to see Bubba Hotep because of Bruce Campbell. I mean, that's why we did all these things. Like there was so much like activation around it all. And I actually, and truth be told, I was at South by Southwest, which is the big film and tech and music festival that goes on in Austin, Texas. I was there, and I got to see the first public screening of Evil Dead Rise with a group of obviously rabid Evil Dead fans. I went to an Evil Dead panel with Bruce Campbell, with Sam Raimi, with Lee Cronin, with Lily Sullivan, with Alyssa Sutherland. Like the whole gang was there to talk about the movie. It's a party. It's funny that you even like played some like rock music to start off. Like that's kind of what the vibe is like every time you're around the Evil Dead people. And I don't even consider myself like the biggest Evil Dead guy in the world. It just seems to have always permeated throughout my life, because I think the fans are the most engaged of all of them.
I mean this as a compliment when I say this, Patrick. Some Evil Dead fans are probably going to be like, that's not a compliment, but I mean this when I say this. I remember when I was in college, the first time I ever saw Rocky Horror Picture Show was at one of those midnight Halloween viewings. I had never seen it before. and everyone's like, "Have
Mhm.
you seen Rocky Horror Picture Show?" And I'm like, "No, we're going to a midnight viewing on Halloween." And I was in college in Cincinnati, and we went and saw it, and I was like, "What in the hell is going on? What is this movie I'm watching right now?" But the crowd was going nuts. Everyone's singing and dancing and just losing their shit. And I was like, I was just so unfamiliar. And I watched Rocky Horror one other time beyond that, and I was like, I didn't really like it because the experience was being there with the crowd. Like the experience
Mhm.
was being around with other people. So my relationship with Evil Dead is a little different because I didn't. So of all the movies I rented and went and saw and grew up on horror, little secret, Patrick, I didn't see Evil Dead until way later. um, I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, and there was this little theater, and I wish I would love to give them a shout out because I can't remember the name of the place, but I discovered it. It's kind of like it was in a deep part of like the outskirts of Pittsburgh. It took me like 40 minutes to get there. But I saw an advertisement. They were showing Nightmare on Elm Street on 35 millimeter, and it's an old theater, like to the point where they still have like old wooden seats. Like they don't even have like the
Yeah,
modern
that's how the Ken
upgraded,
was.
like no, no upgraded, no recliners, no, old school theater. Um, and I went there and saw Nightmare on Elm Street in 35 millimeter because that was one I had never seen that in theater, and I wanted to see it like how you would have seen it if you saw it in 1984. I wanted to go see Nightmare on Elm Street. It was so awesome. And it was October when they did it, and they just had a whole slew of horror films that month. And so they were showing Friday the 13th, the original Halloween, like everything was showing. They were doing double features. Um, and I think it was like the last film of that month was Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. And I was like, you know what? I've never seen these films. I know everyone loves them, and I've just never watched them. I didn't have a good excuse. It wasn't because I was avoiding them or I didn't like them or whatever. I just didn't know them. And so it's like, what
Mhm.
better way to experience it than how people would have experienced this in the 80s to go see it that way? And so the first time I ever saw Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 was back to back on 35 millimeter film in a theater where my ass hurt the entire time because I was sitting on a wooden plank seat and eating old stale popcorn. But that was the first time. And this is not, I mean, this is 12, 13 years ago. I mean, it's not that long ago. So I was a late arrival. And then I saw Army of Darkness after that. And I do enjoy the Evil Dead films. And I've said on this podcast many times, Patrick, like the horror comedies I don't like are typically the Evil Dead style films where it's the goofy, we're not trying to be funny, but we are funny kind of films. Like I just don't
Yeah.
typically get into that. Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are the rare exception. Like that is the exception to the rule in terms of like a really fun, gory, but also kind of goofy movie. Like that's the exception to the rule. And a lot of that is Sam Raimi, and a lot of that is Bruce Campbell, and that's what other people have tried to pull off, and they usually fail when they try to pull it off in the same way. But that's my
Yeah.
relationship. I do not have a long history with Evil Dead. I do like it. I like the films. I've always enjoyed them. But you're right. They have a rabid fan base for Evil Dead. So when what's crazy about Evil Dead Rise, I'm sure you know this, or maybe they mentioned it during the screening. This was originally going to go to streaming. This was going to be
Mhm.
made for HBO Max. It wasn't supposed to go into theaters.
Yeah, I'm really glad it didn't go into theaters. One last little midnight screening story because it just fucking cracked me up. So I went to a lot of these midnight screenings. I have kind of Evil Dead sort of been in my life kind of the whole time, even since I was a kid, because it played on cable. My cousins had it on VHS, so we did watch it a lot. And I went to these midnight screenings, and they were wild and wacky. In college, one of my very close friends, like obsessed, absolutely like Evil Dead was the reason he got into film. And then we had a composer buddy. He also loved it. So I was like, we should go to a midnight screening. They were always happening. We went to a midnight screening. The composer buddy had no idea what midnight screenings are about. And if you're listening and you've never been to a midnight screening, they are about shouting at the screen, saying the joke before it happens. It's all about all this wild interaction. And so my composer buddy, I see him sitting there seething because people are shouting at the screen. They're saying the joke before it happens. They're all screaming and hooting and hollering. And about midway through the fucking screening, he stands up and goes, "Thanks for ruining this fucking movie for me, everybody." And he just fucking stomps out. And I was like, "Oh, he didn't know. He doesn't know what midnight movies are all about."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where I was comparing it to Rocky Horror. Like that's the experience
yeah,
of going to see an Evil Dead film. Like the crowd, like even this last one with Evil Dead Rise, like people were still like it was a normal screening of the film, but people were still like clapping and like that's the Evil Dead fervor. Like, that's when I say compare it to Rocky Horror, that's the best comparison I can make it to. People love that love Rocky Horror, they love the experience of Rocky Horror. And that's kind of what
Mhm.
Evil Dead is. The experience of Evil Dead is as important as the film itself, or at least that's the takeaway I've always had.
Yeah, and it was no different at the South by Southwest screening. Of course, it was like the most anticipated screening of all the screenings. There was a huge red carpet for it, and we got in there. I got my ticket, my advance ticket, and all that. We got in, packed the house, and it was a raucous party the whole time. And it actually is the reason why I went and saw it when it came out in the theaters afterwards, because really, when you're sitting there with that crowd, you don't really get a sense of the movie, because, and this is true of a lot of film festival screenings, like people cheer and scream and laugh even in the wrong places. Like, never mind if it's a midnight showing. It's just something that it's something that seems to be endemic of film festival crowds. So I was like, I really need to get a vibe of what, like, how a regular theater going crowd would feel. It was still a packed house on Thursday opening night at Evil Dead Rise. Packed house. I actually had to get bad seats because it was so full, like a damn Marvel movie on Thursday night, which is cool. It's rad to see everybody just out there and going to see it. But the vibe was different. It was not like the film festival vibe at all. And I was curious because, and now I guess we're getting into the sort of the later culture of Evil Dead. There was a remake back in 2013. Fede Alvarez remade Evil Dead. The Evil Dead, I think, is what they called it, right? That's how they separated it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that movie, I mean, that's a fucking nasty, nihilistic, hardcore horror film. And I love it, by the way. I think it's great. Did you like the
I
2013
did.
one, right?
I did like the 2013, and it was vastly different from the Sam Raimi Evil Dead. You know, it was
Very.
hardcore horror.
Yeah, hardcore horror. And this one, Evil Dead Rise, without getting too much into things, we have our spoiler section coming up. Evil Dead Rise feels a little bit like a throwback to the old Evil Deads. And Army of Darkness is, we might mention it later on in the show, but Army of Darkness is a very big diversion. But my point is those first three movies are fun. They're a ride. There's something to kind of latch onto, and it's going to whiz you around. The Evil Dead of 2013 was just like, no, fuck you. I'm going to stab you in the throat and make you watch this the whole time. Like, it's really dark. Whereas Evil Dead Rise, without giving anything away, feels a little more like the old ones, at least to me. How did you feel about it?
I would slightly disagree. I would say this one feels like the perfect amalgamation of the two. Because I feel like this one has more hardcore horror, and there's some pretty dramatic moments in this film that don't really play as comedy, like you would think of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
Oh, I
There
wouldn't
are
call this a comedy at all. No.
but there are those kind of goofy moments, and there are those kind of wacky, and there are some there are some horrific moments in this film that it can also be kind of like cringy, not in a bad way, but like kind of cringy in the way they happen, very much like they happen in the original film. But there's no goofy, like, my arm gets infected and I have to chop it off, like the Evil Dead, the original, or Evil Dead 2. There's none of that. So I would say Evil Dead Rise is like the perfect amalgamation of the two. Like, it's not as hardcore horror as Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead, but it's not as goofy and kind of funny, and obviously no stop motion animatronics and things like that of the Evil Dead. So I think it's like a good combination of the two, is the way I think of it. I don't really necessarily say it's closer to one or the other. I feel like it's like the perfect mashup, which, to be completely honest with you, Patrick, I'll don't want to bury the lead of our full review or anything, but when I left the theater, I was walking out of the theater after the movie ended, and I was walking out the door, and I was like, you know what? I really like this film. It was like the perfect mix of funny moments here and there, not overdone.
Yeah, sprinkled.
It was
Yes, very
in there,
sprinkled in.
and truly horror. I mean, the gore and the horror in this film are hardcore. Like, I was just like, wow, and the effects were great. And I was just kind of like, every time I've seen Evil Dead, and when I saw Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 in that theater, over a decade ago, and it was a back-to-back feature, when I left, I was like, okay, I get why people love these films. I enjoyed it. Didn't love it, didn't hate, didn't, I mean, I wasn't like, oh my God, I gotta go out and buy every Evil Dead t
Right.
shirt, but I liked it. But I also understood watching it why, when I was with that crowd, people cheering and chanting and Ash and all, I got it. I got
Oh
it.
yeah.
And same thing with Rocky Horror. Like I'm not, I don't own Rocky Horror t-shirts, but I get it. When I saw Rocky Horror, I got it. And I get it with Evil Dead, but I still wasn't that guy. It wasn't my thing. It was not my franchise.
Sure.
When I left Evil Dead Rise, I was like, now this is kind of what I always wanted. This is kind of what I wanted for myself. For me, selfishly, this is what I wanted from an Evil Dead film. And that's what Evil Dead Rise gave me, because it was the perfect combination of gory, hardcore horror sprinkled with kind of funny, goofy moments here and there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a great balance of everything that you're looking for in the Evil Dead franchise. I think a lot of the hardcore fans, I can't speak for any of them. Actually, no, I can, because I was sitting with one. I was sitting with my buddy who went with me to the midnight showing, not the one who stood up and shouted at everybody, but my other buddy who kind of knows what's up, and he got into filmmaking because of Evil Dead. We were together at South by Southwest, and he turned to me after, he goes, I fucking loved that. And that's a guy who lives Evil Dead. I mean, he's a Deadite. He is genuinely a Deadite. He loves it. He came out of there loving it. Me, as a more casual, passenger to the Evil Dead ride, I was like, I had some fun tonight. I think it actually, it's weird how Lee Cronin is our writer director. He didn't do the Raimi thing. Raimi's got a very distinct like visual style. But his visual style, Lee Cronin's visual style, lent to some of that fun. Like, even if it wasn't a funny moment, there was just a way the camera was placed, or the timing of the editing, or the way the line was delivered. It was a bit snappier. It was a bit different, as opposed to the Evil Dead 2013, which was like dour and dark, and everything about that one was hell on earth. This one just, it could wink at you if it needed to, but the wink was kind of fucked up and scary. Like, I liked that whole balance of it. I thought that was a lot of fun. And I actually, when what I appreciated with Lee Cronin, you hand the keys to a newer director, because he's directed other things. A franchise like this, it's a lot of weight on their shoulders. Fetty said, fuck it, I'm just going to scare the shit out of people and make them terribly disturbed. Lee Cronin said, let's have a little bit of fun, and also let's change the setting. This was a big thing that he talked about with his approach to the franchise. When I sat in the panel that he was talking about, he goes, we had to get out of the woods. We had to. It had to be something else. Now, it's no coincidence that it's called Evil Dead Rise, and it takes place in a high rise. That's part of that. It takes place in a high rise building in the middle of the city, which they're calling Los Angeles. I think they shot this in Auckland, New Zealand. They call it Los Angeles. They're in a high rise building. They also changed the setting from a bunch of friends camping to a family, to a mother, her 3 kids, and her sister. Totally different dynamic. So now you're almost forced to play with it a different way. And I think that's what like hardcore fans are going to really enjoy, is that while they have all these great, they have Evil Dead 2, they have Army of Darkness, and they have 2013's Evil Dead, that really, I don't want to say are the same movie, but they are basically just the same formula. Or not Army of Darkness, but the other ones. They're that same formula. Lee Cronin came in and played some new notes. And I think those notes are interesting. And I think they lent themselves to the ride of it all. They lent themselves to a new way of like having stakes and dread, because now it's a family and kids as opposed to friends who are just trying to survive with each other. This is a mom and her kids and the mom's sister trying to protect these kids. So that adds that whole new element on top of everything.
One of the things I thought of when I first watched this movie a couple nights ago, last night actually, the first thing I thought of when the setting was 2 things I enjoyed. One, I love I love claustrophobic horror. This whole film, for the most part, takes place in an apartment, which we talked about with our friends David Charbonnier and Justin Powell with their film The Djinn. We were both blown away. The Djinn is an incredibly well done movie, and it's scary, and it was kind of shocking because it all takes place in basically a 2-bedroom apartment.
I'm still shocked about fucking the gin. It's
How
incredible.
they pulled that off and made it scary because you don't have anywhere to go. You know, like how do you do
Yeah.
this? And because that's the whole point. There's always a cat and mouse game in a horror film, right? That's the basics of horror. Where do you go when it's a 2-bedroom apartment? The fact that they pulled that off and did it so brilliantly, I'm always like kind of amazed. Evil Dead Rise does that as well. They put it in basically a 3-bedroom apartment and a kind of a rundown high-rise building that's about to be condemned. It looks like Detroit is what it looks like to me. And the reason I say that, by the way, not insulting Detroit. The reason I'm saying that is because the film, where the film takes place in, it's in this high-rise and it's raining. And my first thought when I watched the movie was, this looks like the building from The Crow.
Yeah.
From the great, Brandon Lee Crow movie, high rise, kind of dark, dank neighborhood, and that was kind of like a setting for Detroit. That's what it reminded me of. This did not look like LA. If I had one criticism about the setting, like just don't call it LA because it doesn't look anything like LA. I understand cities stand in for cities all the time in movies. I get it. Vancouver, Toronto is constantly New York City. I understand all that, but this did not look like Los Angeles. But that was my first thought was that the apartment building, the setting was great. But then two, immediately you mentioned it, Patrick. When you inject children into a horror story, the intensity gets raised immediately because even if you don't have kids, and I don't have kids, kids are the picture of innocence. That's what we think of children as, right? They're the picture of innocence. Even at teenage age, we don't think of them as like, we don't think of them as the, if you want to go with the whole correlation of like sin and being punished for sin, we talk about the old slashers, the whole, if you have sex, you die thing, that kind of thing, like the little bit of morality kind of injected into those films. Children are the picture of innocence. And so when you inject children into a horror film, you immediately raise the stakes because this film does that. The children are not safe. This is not a film where they're like, well, the children are going to make it out. It's the adults who are going to die. No, that's not how this film works. The children are as at much risk as the adults, if not more, because they are children. And that, to me, that set the tone for this movie right away when you realize, and this is not a spoiler, it's in the trailer, the mother is the one who gets infected by the Book of the Dead. And she's the one coming after the children. And that is a terrifying prospect. It's a very, very old school, like horror of that, of like the parents turning on the children. Like it's usually the children turning on the parents. This is the parents turning on the children. And it's horrifying. Yeah. And that immediately raises the stakes, sets a different tone, and also kind of subverts the expectation of comedy a little bit. Because I think a lot of people, if I've read a couple of people, they said, I didn't like it as much as the other Evil Dead films, and I feel like that's been if there's a person who didn't like it, it's because it doesn't have that same kind of goofy overtone that the original. I always remember the scene from High Fidelity when John Cusack's character is talking to Jack Black's character. He's like, what if I told you I said I haven't seen Evil Dead 2 yet? And he's confused. He has no idea what he's talking about. And he's like, what if I said, he's like, why? And Jack Black's because it's so violent and funny and gory and the soundtrack kicks fucking ass. And like the way he says it, like that's what every Evil Dead fan describes. It's funny, it's gory, it's hilarious. It's hilarious, it's gory, it's violent. There's like a combination of factors here. This one diverts that away because while there are sprinkles of funny and goofy in here, for the most part, it's pretty hardcore and very horror. So that's where maybe some of the really hardcore Evil Dead fans might drop off a little bit or be what they might consider a little disappointed. I personally loved it because I'm not as much into the goofy kind of funny comedy parts of it. So it really depends on what you're looking for and what I was looking for in an Evil Dead film. And I'll be honest, I went into this film with absolutely zero expectations. I had no idea. I'd seen the trailer, but I had no idea really what I was stepping into. I didn't know if it was going to be leaning more into the more Bruce Campbell, goofy, kind of funny, but also gory and scary Evil Dead, or more the Fede Alvarez straight up just fucking haunting, horror, terrifying, you're not going to sleep tonight kind of movie. And I think this film was the perfect mix of those two, where I left and I was like, that was fun, but it was also horrific. That was well acted, but it was also terrifying. It was just a really good mix of everything I would personally want from an Evil Dead film.
It was just on the brighter side of the Fede Alvarez movies, just barely. So that I can see why some of the original hardcore fans, because I bet some of those fans probably hated the Fede Alvarez one, even though I think it's damn good and really faithful to Evil Dead. It's just done with like no humor. I mean, it is just joyless in the best way possible. So this it just sneaks into the sunlight just a hair more. And one more factor before we, and it's kind of spoilery, so I won't get into too much detail before we jump into spoilers here in a minute. But something that I think hardcore fans are going to appreciate about Evil Dead Rise, the Deadites. The Deadites, I was talking with, I'm going to give credit to my buddy Josh Pruitt. You can check him out on Twitter at Zombie TARDIS. Great TV writer, he writes for animation, and he's a hardcore horror fan. He was crediting some podcast that I cannot remember which one did it, so I'm just crediting my buddy Josh, who said the unique thing about the Evil Dead franchise over Freddy, over Jason, over Michael Myers, over anything is the Deadites. And the reason being is the Deadites are dicks. They mistreat you on purpose. And you get no shortage of Deadites treating you real shittily in this movie. Like that's kind of their thing. They like to poke at you. It's part of what gets them off. It's not enough to just kill you and turn you into one of them. They need to fuck with you first. They need to tear you down in the worst way possible. And so that and it hit me like a ton of bricks when my buddy Josh told me that. I was like, that's actually a great point. The Deadites are dicks, and you get those dicky Deadites in Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah, that's a staple, and that's one thing that really did carry over well from the Evil Dead other films to this one is that they are, and they don't, unlike, like, it's almost a little bit like I would consider like a little bit of The Exorcist when Regan is, just tormenting her mother as the demon is tormenting her mother and saying the most horrific things, and they do it to the priest as well, like the scene where the demon uses the mother's voice and she says, Dimmy, Dimmy. And like he's torturing the priest, like basically fucking with the priest in The Exorcist. And Evil Dead is very much in that same light where it's not just enough to kill you, they want to torture you first. And so that's what this film is. Like there's a lot of that in here, like where the Deadites are just full on like torturing their victims, and not the victims, like the victims, the people who aren't infected. Like the person who is infected is torturing the one who's not infected, and it's like a slow burn of like torture. Like they're not just like they're not going to stab you in the heart. They're going to stab you in the shoulder, the hand, the arm. They're going to puke on you. They're gonna say every insulting thing you ever wanted. You never anything you're not supposed to say to a loved one. They say it, and then they'll kill you. Like it's just like the worst thing ever. Like you don't go out easily with the Deadites, and that's absolutely true. And that is one. If you want to talk about the thing that carries over most when you say the Deadites are dicks. When you want to talk about the one thing that carries over the most from the Evil Dead films, that's it. That is the biggest one, because that is where a bit of the humor gets sprinkled in there, but it's also like just relentlessly cruel. Like they are just relentlessly cruel in this film, and that is a perfect carryover from Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, and to a lesser extent Army of Darkness, but Army of Darkness really feels like an outlier of this series when you try to compare them to the original two, and then even this one, or even obviously Fede Alvarez's film is completely different. Or even if you want Ash versus the Evil Dead, we didn't talk about that, the TV show that was on Starz. I never saw that. I heard a lot of people loved it, and I heard it was really, really well done, and it just didn't find a big enough audience to continue beyond, I think, 2 seasons. But I know a lot of people loved that show, and that was a continuation of the Evil Dead. And I've heard, again, I'm speaking from third person of people who've told me this. I've heard it was a pretty faithful sequel, so to speak, of the Evil Dead franchise. But again, just talking film specifically, that part of the original Evil Dead carries over very well into Evil Dead Rise.
Damn right it does. Yeah, I think hardcore Evil Dead fans are gonna have. There's something in this movie for you.
Yeah. With that being said, let's get into spoilers and our categories, because there's a lot to talk about with this film that, again, comes along with spoilers. If you haven't seen Evil Dead Rise, it's out in theaters now. I would highly recommend checking it out as a I would call myself a mid-level Evil Dead fan. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was scary. I thought it was gory. Um, Honestly, and I'm not, we're in April. We're not deep into the year yet. I would probably put this on one of my favorite horror films of the year so far list, Patrick. That's how much I like this. That's how much I enjoyed this film. Again, we're very early in the year, but so far,
Yeah, I haven't thought about it yet.
yeah, I would say that right now on like the short list of like films that I'll be keeping an eye on for the end of the year, I would say Evil Dead Rise makes it for me right now.
I will say this. At South by Southwest, I also saw a little movie that everybody is going nuts over the trailer for. Talk to Me. I won't spoil anything for that yet, but it could probably end up on my list this year.
All right, we'll be talking about that in July.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that one in July.
Yeah, but now we're going to get into spoilers. So again, if you haven't seen Evil Dead Rise, go check it out. Or if you have seen it, here we get into spoilers. Or if you just don't care, we're going to talk about the film without any restrictions now as we get into spoilers, Patrick. This film, we talk about relentless. Like, this film is so brutal. And we talk about the kids. Like, I immediately when the film started, they introduced a couple of the neighbor characters. And my first thought was, oh, they're going to kill the neighbors to save the children. Like, they're not going to kill the children because these kids were fairly young. They were like, I think the eldest son was like 16 and the daughter was younger. And then Cassie is the little girl and she's like 8 or 9 or whatever. And then, of course, Beth is the sister and then Ellie is the mother. My first thought when they introduced these, they had like 3 neighbors and this old crotchety, like, old bastard who's like the guy who opens his door with a shotgun, and points it at you like, what are you doing at my front door, boy?
He looked and reminded me exactly of my Uncle Eddie. So when you hear the words Uncle Eddie, like that's what that guy looks like.
Yeah.
For sure.
So like when they introduced the neighbor characters, my first thought was, okay, they're going to be the ones getting killed and the children are going to be saved because a lot of times, and I understand it. Like it's like the trigger I have, Patrick, where I will typically like immediately knock a horror film or want to turn it off and not watch it is when you kill animals. Specifically, like when you kill a dog. I love dogs. I have 2 dogs. My dogs are my children. I love my dogs. When they show a scene like that, immediately I'm like, you just got knocked like 3 points. Don't kill a dog in a horror film. Don't do it. And if you notice, they don't do it much anymore. They used to do it back in the day all the time. It was like a cheap ploy to like mess with the family you're messing with in a horror film is they kill the pet first. Nowadays, people don't play that because people love their dogs. Like, no. You can kill him. Don't kill the dog. So that was kind of my initial thought was they were introducing these neighbor characters to be the cannon fodder and the kids were going to be saved. Not as all what actually happens in this film because the kids, only one of them survives. And I was like, not that I was rooting for the kids to die, Patrick. I really wasn't, but I was just kind of like, I'm glad they took it that far because it subverted my expectations because immediately, right at the start of the film, I thought I had it figured out. The neighbors are going to get killed. The children are going to be saved. That's not what happened. That surprised me. And I was like, way to go, Evil Dead Rise, because you immediately subverted my expectations and then delivered throughout the film of saying, no one's safe in this thing.
Yeah, I think you have to go that way these days. I don't think you can play that game anymore where it's like, oh, we'll all work. Like, we are now in a post Game of Thrones world. And what did Game of Thrones teach us? It taught us that no one is safe and no one should be safe. They should all be at risk. And why is that smart? It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It keeps you guessing. It keeps the dread level high. And when they take out, Bridget is the middle child, and Danny is the oldest son. When they become deadites, you're like, oh shit, we're kind of fucked. And Cassie, the little 8-year-old or whatever, the sweetest little face, like just a darling little girl. And you're like, oh my God. And she's going through the hell of all of this. I was like, even if she gets out of this, she's completely like damaged for good. There's no level of therapy that is going to get over this because, by the way, she has to kill Deadite Bridget, her older sister. She has to watch her mom like turn into this very evil and awful Deadite. Poor little Cassie. No, killing her might have been actually more merciful than dragging her through the hell of this movie.
And I do like that she had a baby doll head on the end of a staff, and she called it Staffney. I thought that was
Yeah.
hilarious. She was chopping the heads off baby dolls, so she wasn't all the way there to begin with at 8 years old. She was already a little, she was already chopping.
Yeah, it's a little wicked one.
Yeah, she was already there, like kind of like your kid. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, oh, dude. Honestly, I'm watching that, going, okay, she's about she's right between like my kid's age. My kids would be fucking pissing and shitting themselves. Like that. It was just such an intense night of terror in her household. I go, there's no. I go, that's the suspension of disbelief is going. Yeah, there's no way this girl isn't catatonic within 5 minutes because of
Yeah.
how absolutely horrific the horrific things that are unfolding in front of this poor little girl.
Yeah, that's going to be the girl you're going to find, like in the first season of True Detective, when Matthew McConaughey's character goes and visited the girls he saved like years later. She's just sitting there in a rocking chair and hasn't like
Oh
spoken
yeah.
in years. Like that's going to be
Oh
Cassie.
yeah.
She's all kinds of like she's got PTSD for years to come. Um,
Cassie is perma rocking chair.
yeah, Burma rocking chair. Let's get into best performance because Patrick, I'm just gonna spoil it here. Your best performance is my best performance, and honestly,
Yeah.
it's everyone's best performance because this was the one. So Patrick, go ahead and talk about it, and we'll just talk about what is our shared best performance in Evil Dead Rise.
It's a pretty small cast, actually. It's a very contained horror. Basically takes place on one small floor of a condemned apartment building, so real contained. Nobody came even close, and it's not a diss to anybody. It's just nobody came close to Alyssa Sutherland, who played Ellie, the mom, who actually turns into the Deadite. She's all over the trailer, so you know who she is. I mean, this is a performance for the ages. She goes fucking balls to the wall. She talked about at the panel that I was at. Somebody asked like how she channeled it all, and she goes, "I actually studied Jim Carrey's The Mask." She goes, I studied like the idea of like my body being completely taken over by something else. And it just shows. I think, and you see a lot of it in the trailer. You see a lot of the physicality in the trailer, the playfulness, the wicked playfulness of Deadite mom, Deadite Ellie. It's one of these performances where you're like, holy shit.
She has maybe not since. God, I'm trying to think. Like maybe I don't want to like go too far on a limb here. Like because I always think of like there's certain performances like when you think about Heath Ledger and the Joker, like really animated faces.
Oh,
They
right.
sell it with their face. Her
Yeah.
face in this film sold everything. Her smile, her
Hmm.
eyes. She had a very animated face and it worked. She was creepy as hell. And it wasn't just about the makeup and the blood and the the creepy demon teeth and all that kind of stuff. It was just her demeanor and the look on her face. She
Hmm.
looked full bore psychotic.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she sold it. She had a very animated face, and I'd be honest, that's what got me with her performance. Like it was the face. It was all the face. Her mouth, her eyes, everything about the way she was looking. When she looked at the characters, it was when she was looking at her sister, she was looking at her daughter, it was like she was looking into their soul as something to eat. Like that's
Yeah.
what she looked like. Like you were a piece of me. Like there is that scene that you see that we played in the trailer. The use of a peephole in this movie is so well done. I love that trick where you look out the people and you see what's going on in the hallway, and that's a big part of this movie over and over again. But with Ellie, when she's up there, she's like, "Let mommy in now." Like it's just
Yeah.
she does it such in a way that is so creepy and so effective, yet so utterly terrifying. And there's another scene from the trailer that we all know. It's a very famous line. I'm not, this is nothing that, again, we're in spoiler territory, so it doesn't matter. But the scene where she gets the voice and she goes, "Mommy's with the maggots now." Like, it's
Yeah.
just, she's so animated and it's just so terrifying, everything she does. Again, this is one of those roles where you're like, she's not going to get nominated beyond like the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, which awesome for her for that. But this is
Yeah.
the kind of performance where I'm like, this should get nominated for something. Like, I'm not saying she needs an Oscar nomination. I'm just saying, like, like her performance was so well done. It was so
Yeah.
animated and also very. What's the word I'm looking for here? Like she was very when I say athletic, but like it was very physical.
Oh, yeah.
A very physical,
Very
performance.
physical.
Very physical performance, and well done, like really well done.
I'm glad you mentioned the physical part because to me there were times where she almost like became animal. Like she reminded me of I was like am I looking at like a xenomorph?
She turned feral.
Like
She turned feral.
yeah. I mean, there was just like the physicality, the way she could just prop her body and chase after somebody. Like she just went from like human to animal. It was like it was really weird. And then she has like in the earlier parts where she turns deadite, she's sort of half still alive. So she's kind of walking around like a reanimated dead body like in the very original or in the early parts, and you see a little bit of it in the trailer with the eggs and the like something about like her body is like lifeless, but it's still moving around. That's acting. That physicality is all coming through. It's just nobody stood a chance, and spoiler alert, nobody does stand a chance. It's the fucking deadites. They're gonna get you.
Absolutely. Also, I did almost go in one other direction with my best performance because I did want to give a shout out here because we've had this discussion many times in the show. We always kind of feel bad when we knock a kid performance, but we've said going back to our friends David Charbonnier and Justin Powell with their movies with The Boy Behind the Door and The Gin, like when you have a great kid, a great child actor, it makes your movie, but can also easily break your movie. If you have a bad child actor and they can't pull off the role, and we always say and I do mean this sincerely, I feel bad because it's like a 10-year-old kid. Like, how are you going to, you're 10 years old. Like, like you're not supposed to be, a phenomenal actor or phenomenal anything at 10. You're a kid.
Yeah.
I always feel a little bad when we kind of take shots at kids on the show because it's like, whatever. But to that credit, all the kid actors, and I know obviously not all of them are kid actors or teenagers and whatever, they're more accomplished, but I do want to give a shout out to Nell Fisher, who played Cassie. She did a really, really good job in this film. It reminded me of the little girl in The Haunting of Hill House, who went on to do other things as well. She's been in other films since then. She was in that, just a really strong child role, and she had a lot of scenery to chew on that could have flubbed her up numerous times. And I thought Nell Fisher killed it as Cassie. I thought she did a phenomenal job showing fear, showing strength, showing, genuine terror. I just thought she did a really, really good job for, again, I don't know how old the actress is who played her, but she had to be 8 or 9 or 10, maybe at most when this film.
Oh, she's a baby. I mean, she looks like a baby. She's so small.
Yeah.
20 she was born in 2011. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so she's 12 years old now, which means she was like 10 years old when they were filming this. So yeah.
Yeah. I was getting big Newt vibes from Aliens.
Yeah, good. Yeah, very, very good comparison there. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because of the, again, like, I mean, I guess you would call it a kid in shock because the kid should be absolutely terrified at everything that's unfolding in front of them. She kind of was like, not stoic, but just sort of like a little more measured than you would expect. Yeah. It's okay. I just let it go because I'm like, yeah, I mean, what else are you going to do? The kid should be a puddle on the floor, nothing more than that, just off of one thing. But the way they played it, yeah, kind of gave me more of that Newt vibe.
Yeah. One other thing I want to mention before we get to our next category, I want to mention this is like props in the movie that I really enjoy is how they introduce the Book of the Dead being like hidden in this building. And I loved, because one of the things in the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, the way that they played the verses from the Necronomicon, from the Book of the Dead, was the tape recorder, the old school tape recorder, like the reel-to-reel tape recorder. And they played it. I loved the trick of playing with the vinyl record this time. The vinyl record from the 1920s with the priests and everything. I thought that was a really cool trick. And there's a great scene in the film where the sister, Beth, is it Beth? Am I thinking of the name right? Beth?
Yeah, I think it's Beth. Yeah.
Beth. And she's in the room listening to the record on her headphones, trying to figure out how to stop the Deadites, how to stop this thing. And so you have to spin it faster to make it play the proper speed. And Ellie comes creeping out of the vent at her sister, but it's just a really cool trick. I'm a vinyl record collector, and I just love that trick of using the vinyl because there's something creepy about that because you can slow it down and speed it up, and you can make it sound like that. in 1963. And then they speed it up to like normal speed. I love the vinyl record trick of how they recorded these priests reading from the Book of the Dead. And I loved how they used that in the film with the one kid being a DJ or a wannabe DJ and then using his turntables. That's how they ignited the Book of the Dead. I just love that little trick in this movie. I just want to mention that because I thought that was a really cool like diversion from the original and doing something a little bit old school, but also modern.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the things I think, especially when I think of the 2013 Evil Dead, was like, why is this guy reading from this book out loud? Like it felt fucking weird. Like you would just sit there and look at it. Instead, he's like reciting the things. But I get it. This is how you get in. The way they get in this movie is the most clever and makes the most sense because this kid is 16 years old. They don't use a 16-year-old head does not use their head properly. So he's like, yeah, I got this super evil book and I'm going to start playing this vinyl super loud that makes these incantations and then all the pages start flopping around and I'm just going to go with it. That's a 16-year-old thing to do. It actually made logical sense why the book was summoned, like why the Deadites were summoned, because this 16-year-old kid's fucking around with some vinyl he found in an old bank vault.
Yeah, I would do that. I guarantee you I would do that. Like, I see vinyl, I'm like, ooh, a vinyl, what's on here? Like, I would be the same way. So I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, I just like that they went an intriguing way around to get to it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, ooh, here's this record. This happens to be a tape player in the middle of this cabin. We're going to play it and just see what happens. This was just a really clever way around that. I thought it was just a really, really unique way of doing it. Let's talk about best scare. Because there's a lot of good scares in this film, and it's a very gory movie too. We're going to get to best gore in a second. What is your best scare in Evil Dead Rise?
My best scare. So we always talk about jump scares, and the anticipation of jump scares. Those all totally work. But this one, and you see a little bit in the trailer. This one just worked on a different level. It's more of like what do we call it? Like pucker factor, Damon.
It's a visceral, it's a very visceral feeling.
Very visceral. It's just when your butthole is like like and it's the tattoo.
Yeah, full on balloon knot. You are puckered up.
Yeah, just balloon knot situations. Like it's when Deadite Ellie attacks her kid with a tattoo gun to the eyeball. And you see it in the trailer, and it's just you and I are covered in tattoos. We know full well what a tattoo needle feels like on our rubbery old skin. Never mind, like on your very sensitive eyeball. And just I could feel the whole energy in the room. Everybody in that theater was tensing up as this tattoo needle was just a micromillimeter away from the eyeball. It's just one of those things that gets you in a whole different way.
It was it's very old school giallo in that way. Like giallo films, especially Fulci loves to just torture eyeballs and do it really up close. We did the New York Ripper, which is a very unique film in and of itself, but there's a scene with a razor blade in an eyeball right up on your face, and it's really like intense in that moment, and it's so close up that it's uncomfortable. And that's what this felt like when you see that tattoo needle jabbing up and down and it's getting nearer and nearer to this eyeball. You're just like, you're literally closing one eye like, this is not going to feel good. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of like a giallo film. Like one thing about giallo films, they love to do up close horror. That was up close horror.
Yeah, the whole theater just sounded like someone was wringing out a balloon. Everybody's like, oh fuck.
Yeah. So my best scare. So I will say that there were a lot of well done jump scares and some really genuinely good, terrifying horror, especially once the kids get infected, because when they get infected, things really do go ape shit in this movie. But my favorite one that legitimately got me in the theater, and you know this, Patrick, with jump scares, like jump scares are meant to make you jump. That's why they're called jump scares. I know that's a shocking revelation. Typically speaking, jump scares don't really get me that often because we talk about it all the time, Patrick, we're so desensitized to horror that we just kind of see it coming. We can predict it. Now, that never takes away from my enjoyment of a horror film. I still absolutely love it. It's just rare when I get shocked, when my heart skips a beat. It never takes away from my enjoyment of the film. I still absolutely love the films. It's just harder to get me because I've seen a million horror films and I see things coming. There's a scare in the hallway where Ellie jumps out of nowhere to come after her sister and Cassie. I don't really have a great explanation of like how it's set up because it's such a surprise when it happens. She just
I
pops
think
out. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think why it's a surprise to you is the one you're talking about specifically is just moments before that. Beth, her sister, blows her leg off with a shotgun.
Yeah.
So she falls back and she seems immobilized. So you won't expect that fucking. She jumps out at Beth and like, I'm gonna fucking get you, bitch, like crazy with no leg. You didn't think that with the no leg she was gonna be able to like lurch at her the way she did. So it's a great misdirection because they show you very clearly that some of her mobility has been taken away.
It got me. It absolutely
Yeah.
got me. My heart skipped a beat. I was like, oh shit. When it happened, I remember in the theater, I was sitting there and it got me. I kind of lurched back in my seat a little bit because we've talked about this on the show before. When you watch with your wife and I watch with my girlfriend, a lot of times we judge films by them, not by
Yeah.
us, because they are typical normal horror movie fans where they're not weird freaks like we are, and they do still jump at traditional jump scares, and that's where you and I have judged films a little differently. We're like, wow, this really did work, even though we didn't jump, they did, and that's the typical audience. Your wife and my girlfriend are the typical audience goer, right? And there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that, by the way. There's absolutely
Great.
nothing wrong with that. That was one that got me. It was the one in that film that got me. There's a lot of good effective jump scares, and I'm saying this knowing that none of them really got me, but that one got me where I jumped back in my seat and I was like, oh, literally in my head, I went, oh shit. And I immediately jotted down the note and I put hallway scare because it jolted me. And I don't really get jolted like that in films anymore. Like occasionally it'll happen and I always remember it because it is so rare. But that's the one that got me, man. I did not see that one coming, and I don't know what when Ellie pops up. I was just I lurched back in my seat, my heart skipped a beat, and I was like, wow, this really worked. Great job, Lee Cronin and company, because it's hard to get me, and that one got me.
You're coming back to town in July, and hopefully we get to watch a horror film while we're here together. I hope I catch you doing it, fucking jolt in your seat. Because if you guys don't know, Damon Martin's about 6'3", big dude. To see a big tough tattooed dude go, oh shit, it would just be fucking so worth it. I really want to see that.
It's rare, but it will happen, and it definitely happened there. And this one I went and saw by myself. I actually didn't go with anyone to see this one, so I was by myself, and I jumped back in the seat. So thankfully there was no one around to laugh at me, but this one definitely got me. Let's talk about best gore. And Patrick, this is a gory film. And let me also, again, kind of going backwards here, we haven't talked about this at all because we didn't give away spoilers. Can we talk real quick before we get into best gore about the cold open?
Sure.
The cold
yeah.
open.
Yeah, we should.
The twist. It was really well done because you talked about when Lee Cronin was at South by Southwest and he said we had to leave the woods. But how does this film open?
In the woods.
With this couple and her sister on like a camping trip together, and we come to find out that the sister is infected by the Deadites, and she goes after her sister and her boyfriend, and it's a pretty gnarly scene. And it looks like we're getting set up for another Evil Dead in the camp, in the cabin, because they literally say cabin in the woods, like it's there. And then it says one day earlier, and then you go to this dilapidated, old, rundown, condemned apartment building, and that's where the whole story actually takes place. I just really like that twist of the cold opening, because you don't know how you got there until literally the last scene in the movie. You find out the girl got infected and then went on the trip. But it was a really nice twist with that cold open, with you're in the woods, very familiar setting for an Evil Dead film, and then it kind of turns around on its head. I really like that part. I really like that cold open.
It was a bit of a fake out. It really was. Like you think it's going to be about those people. Like you can't really tell in the trailer that it's not everybody that you see. You just know, okay, it's a couple of bodies. Like, okay, well, it's probably the bodies that we see in the rest of the trailer. It's not. It's a whole different group of people that get infected after the events of Evil Dead Rise. So, they're kind of showing the final bit. So the next one, if they have a sequel, probably going to take place in the woods.
Yeah, and the sister gets scalped by the infected sister. She literally rips the top of her skull off. Really good gore. Not my favorite gore, but it's really good gore. But this is a super gory film. There's literally a shining scene where blood comes pouring out of elevator doors, which is really a nice homage to The Shining. But Patrick, what was your favorite gore in Evil Dead Rise?
Before I mention that, I'm just going to say 1,700 gallons of fake blood were used on this. I think Fetty's might have beat it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but 1,700 gallons is nothing to snore. I mean, come on, that's a lot of fucking blood. This is a gory movie. Some of the gore is like vomit, like oh, I don't know, 6 gallons of projectile vomit coming out of one person at one moment, like shit like that. Like it gets fucking gnarly. But I had to go with the many stages of Ellie, our lead Deadite, played by Alyssa Sutherland. She just, I mean, she just gets like dismembered throughout the movie, basically. She doesn't look great to begin with. Once she's turned Deadite, she already looks basically like The Walking Dead, like just to start. And then, like as things go on, like they're fighting back against her, so they stab her with this, they impale her with that. At one point, Beth blows her up with a shotgun, and she loses an arm and a leg. And then, and that's when I was like, golly, I mean, she's really getting torn to shit here, but she won't stop. She just keeps coming because that's how Deadites are. They won't stop until they've destroyed everything in their path. And so what she does is she uses all the dead bodies around her. She resurrects them as Deadites, and they all like kind of mash into her and create this big like spider-like being. This sort of reminds me of the Thing remake, like just kind of a mash of limbs that kind of move and chase after Beth and little Cassie. And then on top of that, then they get tossed into the wood chipper. I mean, Ellie she gets every type of gore inflicted upon her until she is literally chopped into mincemeat.
Can I say real quickly here that kudos to Evil Dead Rise. Outside of maybe Fargo, the best use of a wood chipper in a film. And here's a lesson for you, David Gordon Green. This is how you use a wood chipper, you Halloween Ends hack. All right? I'm still angry about that. That was great. The wood chipper was great. The wood chipper was fantastic, and the transformation was great. And they do a lot of close up. There's one scene, I believe, where they show like the fingernail getting chipped, and that always gets you. Like there's always
fingernails. Ooh.
That's always a good one. And yeah, her physical transformation throughout the film is just really creepy and very, very gory. So there's a lot of good gore in this film. There's a really visceral scene where the sister stabs her brother several times in the shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
To the forearm. That's really, really brutal and really, really well done. I thought that was a good one. But the one that everyone's going to talk about, I feel like I have to use as best gore just because it's already on T-shirts and stuff, is the cheese grater. Now,
right.
The cheese grater actually doesn't go as far as I thought it would. It's basically
right.
The cheese grater gets grabbed and run across Beth's leg. That's all. It's not across a face. It's not like a murder weapon. It's actually just across the back of her calf. But in that single solitary moment, when they do the slow drag of the cheese grater across the leg and you see her skin peel up and the blood come out, it is so cringe-inducing. It was the scene that most made me shiver in that movie because they do it in such a way and they show it in such a way to where because everyone, I would imagine, at some point in their life has used a cheese grater, and at some point in your life you've nicked yourself using a cheese grater because you accidentally put your thumb on the wrong part, you nick yourself or whatever, or you almost nick yourself, whatever. Imagine that where they grab it and they just run it down the back of your fucking leg. And it is so, it's like, how some people react to nails on a chalkboard. That's what it was.
Yeah, it's that.
That's what it was to me, where I was just like, no.
Yeah. It just seems very uncomfortable. Like, I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it is you're just very uncomfortable. And it got a big rise out of the, no pun intended, big rise out of the audience that I was with a few nights ago when I watched it.
I always commend horror films for, there's a million horror films out there, and when you can creatively kill people or torture people or creatively hurt people in a horror film and actually do it in a way that either you haven't seen before or it hasn't done in such a way that's so memorable, I always credit them. And I know cheese graters, other kitchen appliances have been used. We actually, one of our favorite kills of 2022 was the bread slicer in Fear Street, which was such a creative, unique kill in that film. But I always like when you find a new way to use a kitchen appliance. I'm just a good kitchen appliance murder weapon person, apparently, Patrick. And using a cheese grater down the back of a leg, man, it really did get me. I'm just like, that's real uncomfortable.
You know what? I'm going to do a cake mixer kill. That's it. That's what's next. Let's get a cake mixer kill going.
Yeah, maybe the food processor kill, maybe to show it's.
That's a good one too. Can I say this on the podcast? Ding dong down the fucking food processor.
Yeah, dude, food processor right there, man. Mangled penis. Yeah, it's right there. It is.
Processed penis in that food processor.
Yeah, there you go. All right. This is of course, oh, by the way, we talked about this off air, Patrick. We talked about, so Patrick, you saw this, you said earlier, you saw this at South by Southwest. So you'd already seen this. You saw it again. I had not seen it until literally 24 hours ago. Before I went to see it, I asked you, I was like, is Bruce Campbell in this movie? Because I didn't know the connection. I knew Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell produced it, but I literally, all I saw was the trailer. I had no other research done. I tend not to do that until I see it and then get ready to do the podcast. The less I know, the better. Trailers are about as far as I like to go. And I said, is Bruce Campbell in this film? So I thought maybe like he would pop up and like help save the day, or there'd be like a post-credit scene where Ash shows up, or, I just wondered. I was curious how it connected. And you said, I heard there's a cameo, but I have no idea where it's at. Like, I don't know where it's at. Did you figure out the cameo? Because I did.
Yes, I figured it out, but please enlighten us.
When we talked about the vinyl records being played with the priests, talking about the Book of the Dead and eventually reading verses from the Book of the Dead, there's one priest in the background on one of the records warning them not to read from the Book of the Dead to stop this. That's the voice of Ash. That's the voice of Bruce Campbell on that vinyl record that we hear played during the movie. I was like, oh, there it is. There's his cameo.
There he was. If you listen closely, Bruce Campbell's part of the movie.
Yeah. All right. So let's rank them. And by rank, I mean the Evil Dead films. Now we're going to go 5 films because we are going to include the remake. It is a remake, but it is a faithful remake. And what I mean by that is I consider like Dawn of the Dead, the Zack Snyder one, also a faithful remake. Like it's an homage to the original.
I could even argue that Fetty's remake it could still exist in the world of Evil Dead. Like Ash could still be somewhere out there.
They wanted to. They were talking about doing a combined film where Mia, I think, is the lead character in Evil Dead, the Fetty Alvarez, and then Ash they meet somehow. They talk.
Yeah, and I think it counts in the canon to me anyway.
5 Evil Dead films: Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, and then Evil Dead Rise. So rank them 1 to 5, Patrick. How do you rank the Evil Dead franchise?
We're gonna go back and forth each of our 5s.
I think we just go for our top.
Oh, do all mine. Okay,
give top 5, and then I'll give my top because it's only 5. So
yeah. So coming in at number 5 is the original Evil Dead, and I hold your pearls, Evil Dead fans. The only reason the original comes in, it's the one I've seen the least. It just is. It's never been readily available to me, so I would put that at the bottom just because I haven't seen it that much. My number 4 would be Army of Darkness, which I actually really enjoy and I like, but it's not really part of the series. I mean, it is, but it's not the other kind of movies. It's a complete diversion. Then I would go Evil Dead 2. Loved it, seen it many times, enjoyed seeing it with audiences. It's a great movie. Then I think I'm going to go Evil Dead Rise, which I like very much. I think it's a good movie. I think we've talked about it plenty today, and it's clear why I enjoy it. I think it's incredibly well done, and I want to see more of that little bit of the universe. And I'm going to go with The Evil Dead 2013 as my number one because it's just fucking nasty. And I like nasty. And it's so damn nasty. And I just, something about it's like you don't even feel safe when you're watching it. It gets right under your skin.
Yeah, it's a very brutal film.
Very.
It is everything that Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 is, except not funny at all. Like, there's no comedy in there, and there's nothing
not
to
funny.
Not at all. All right, so my list starts out at number 5. I'm going to go Army of Darkness. I don't dislike Army of Darkness. It's just such a different film, and it leans much further into the comedy and the goofiness than any of the other films. He's time traveling. It's
a comedy.
I don't dislike it, but it's a vastly different film than any of the other Evil Dead films. So that's number 5. Number 4 for me is the original Evil Dead. I like Evil Dead, the original Evil Dead. But much like Sam Raimi basically said, I'm going to redo Evil Dead as Evil Dead 2 and just have more money and a little bit more of a budget to make it and make it a little bit better made. That's what he did. And so Evil Dead would come in at number 4. Number three and number 2 are tough for me because they're interchangeable. If you ask me this question tomorrow, I might give you a different order. Right now, I will say The Evil Dead, the Fede Alvarez film, will be number 3. Love it. Mm-hmm. Brutal, relentless. I wish they would do a sequel. I know he's talked about it, but it's all kind of faded away. I wish they would do it, but it seems like now we're kind of in this new Evil Dead universe. Not complaining. I just wish we had gotten more out of that before we kind of moved on. Number 2 right now would be Evil Dead 2. It is goofy, it is funny, and I love Bruce Campbell. I am Bruce Campbell fan. He is just he is the epitome of the goofy hero character that he is, the Ash character, chopping off the arm, slamming on the chainsaw. I love it. I love that. And then number 1, probably surprised a lot of people, my number 1 film is Evil Dead Rise. I loved Evil Dead Rise. I thought, as I said numerous times, I hate to keep repeating myself, it was the perfect combination of the Fede Alvarez style of just brutal, relentless, and then the kind of goofy, but not goofy, but kind of sprinkled in with
I'd just say it's fun.
It's fun. They're like the scenes like where the mother is like talking to, like I said, the whole, mommy's with the maggots now. Like it's creepy, but also kind of like goofy and funny. I loved it. And also, even though they're telling me it's LA, I loved the claustrophobic setting of the apartment building. And I keep saying downtown Detroit because it reminds me so much of The Crow. That dilapidated building, the rain, I love that setting. And again, I love claustrophobic horror films. I adore claustrophobic horror films. And I know people are going to say, well, hold on, Evil Dead 2 is in a cabin. Yeah, it is, kind of. They go way out the cabin. People come driving in from outside and go to the cabin. Okay, but this one is very much takes place in 80% of the movie takes place in this apartment. And the other 20% takes place in the apartment building. You know what I mean? Like there's very little outside of that. The cold open and then the garage in the apartment, and then at one point we do see the sister before she comes to visit Ellie. She's in a bathroom of a club that she's working at, and that's like a little 2-minute clip before she goes to see her sister when she finds out she's pregnant. That's also, I didn't even mention, we talk about another creepy scene. The creepy scene is when Ellie tackles her sister and she hears the baby and she goes, I'm going to take your soul. And then she hears the baby in her sister and she goes, 2 souls. I was like, oh God, that was so good. This is so creepy. Evil Dead Rise is number 1 for me, Patrick, and it's not because I don't love the other ones. I do, but this was the Damon Evil Dead movie. This was everything I want out of an Evil Dead movie.
I think it's no mistake that both you and I pick the least Evil Dead movies of for hardcore Deadites. We're not really Deadites. Like we enjoy and understand the franchise, but we're not as dedicated as all these other people. So these movies speak to us because we're looking for something a little bit different. And so it makes sense that both you and I picked the new stuff as opposed to the old stuff.
Yeah, it's just such a, like I said, I love this movie. And again, maybe I'm being a little prisoner of the moment, because I just saw it 24 hours ago, but I walked out and I was just genuinely like infected with the movie. I loved it. I just thought it was really, really fun and really, really enjoyable night at the movies. And I just, again, I loved it. And yeah, so to that point, let's move on to our next category, which is remake, sequel, or leave it alone. And this is the category, Patrick, where we basically take a movie that we're reviewing and we say, should they remake it? Should they sequelize it, or should they just leave it alone and make it a one standalone film? Now, this is a little harder because this is obviously sequel and part of an already bigger franchise. But when we're talking specifically about this version of the film, do we want to remake it? Do we want to make a sequel, or do we just want to leave Evil Dead Rise as its own thing? So, for you, Patrick, remake, sequel, or leave it alone?
I'll say this. I'm actually going to say leave it alone. Now, I know that it basically sets up very easily the next movie. It's like literally these three people that go out to this cabin in the woods. I don't really want to see that movie. Like, I've seen that movie. So we had Evil Dead Rise. Cool. Leave it alone. I don't need the sequel to it, the follow up, the people that got infected and are now out in the woods. I don't need to see that. Give me another way to see Evil Dead. So I'm saying leave this one alone, and on the next one, show me something different.
Okay. I'm actually going to go in this sequel category for this reason. I know Bruce Campbell has kind of shied away from doing another Evil Dead film himself. He's kind of said, I'm kind of retired from being Ash, although, you know, I feel like if the Brinks truck backed up and there was the right story, we could get Ash to come out of retirement. But I'm playing under the stakes that Bruce Campbell is kind of done being Ash. Beth, played by Lily Sullivan, is a great heroine in this film, and now she's got Cassie and her own kid, who she was pregnant with in this film. Somehow turning her into the new Ash for this universe, the Beth character, I would have a lot of fun with that. So I'm not saying continue it from the whole in the cabin in the woods, and we're going to continue that version of the story, and it's going to continue from there. I think you continue it where, you know, 3 years down the road, there's still some crazy, nasty, awful shit going on in that cabin. And then Lily busts in with that chainsaw and a shotgun, and she's the new Ash, and she's going to tear up the Deadites. Like, I would be okay with that kind of a film carrying on. So I'll say sequel based upon that character, Beth becoming kind of the new Ash. Like, we kind of, you know, make her the new heroine of the series. Or, you know, again, if we're going to combine universes, we're going to get Ash to come back and, like, you know, team up with Lily, or we're going to get, you know, however we want to do that. So I'll say sequel because they did such a good job with this one. I wouldn't mind seeing another one.
That's interesting. I don't hate that. I don't hate the idea of her coming back after the events of the cabin stuff.
Yeah,
I could get into that.
Yeah, so I'm with you on the cabin. I don't want that to be the continuation. But
right.
Beth being kind of the new Ash, that I think would be kind of a cool concept. So I'm on board.
I mean, they really homage Ash very much with her. When she's covered in that blood and she's got that big, thick red stripe of blood down the middle of her face, and she even like looks like Ash in that moment. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, really well done. All right. So our second to last category, Patrick, is could we survive this horror film? This has become one of my favorite categories on Rewind of the Living Dead. So basically what we do is we inject ourselves into whatever horror film we're reviewing, and we say, could we survive this horror film? So, Evil Dead Rise, Patrick, are you surviving Evil Dead Rise?
This is tough because I want to believe that I'm just like Ash. I want to believe that I've got that same kind of like, all right, fuck you. Like, let's do this. Like, I will chop my arm off to keep that fucking infection from rising up and getting me. I want to believe that. Realistically speaking, I don't think anybody beats the Deadites. I don't think they do. I think you get damn close, but you end up losing some way. So maybe I even survived the night. But I think the Deadites are going to catch up with you regardless. Once you have dipped your toe in that pool, I don't think you're getting out.
Yeah, so first off, I know I'm not surviving for one reason. I already said I'm Danny. I'm the kid who would play the vinyl record out of curiosity to see what's going on, and I'm going to be the one to unleash the Deadites in the first place. So right in and of itself, I can't make it out alive because I'm the jackass who's like, ooh, let's see what's on this evil demonic record that was buried in the basement underneath a giant Christ statue. I'm the jackass who goes, let's see what's on here. So yes, I would not survive it because I would be the one to unleash it all. And I just know me. And also the way you had to get out of this thing is you had to climb down. You had to go down in an elevator or try to climb down a fire escape. They went down in an elevator. I ain't making it, man. I know I'm not making this one out of here. I'm 100% going to be the guy in the hallway who gets killed. I'll be the guy with the shotgun to shoot, and then they'll end up killing me anyways. So no, I'll admit I'll be the jackass who plays the record, unleashes demons on the world, and then gets killed later. So no, I'm not making it out of Evil Dead Rise. I know that. Hopefully I don't get put through the wood chipper, although as long as I get to put David Gordon Green through it first, then you can throw me into it. Then you can throw me right into the wood chipper, Patrick.
I gotta get you two guys together. We gotta work this out. Oh my god!
I'm gonna become the Deadite, and I'm just gonna, instead of killing people, you're supposed to be chucking copies of Halloween Ends into the wood chipper. I'm like,
yeah, like you walk into the apartment with this big box of Halloween Ends, and instead of throwing eggs into the pan, you're just throwing DVDs on the fire, Blu-rays on the fire.
I'm gonna be unleashing the Deadites in like Best Buy. I'm gonna be going there like, where's your copies of the Halloween Ends? Give me Corey. I want Corey. The wood chipper.
Oh my god!
Great wood chipper in this film though. So
just toss Corey into a wood chipper.
I'm just saying that would be me as a Jedi. I'd be full on, chucking the copies of that, and David Gordon Green goes right in behind it. All right, last category is always, Patrick. Is it scary? So Evil Dead Rise, is it scary?
Well, there's two answers here. I'm feeling like old school me right now. I'm desensitized. This movie didn't scare me. It really didn't. But it will scare the average moviegoer. I'll say this: I went with my brother. Shout out to Schwink. You can read his movie reviews on Instagram. He went, and he's not as he likes horror too, but he's just not as hardcore into it as I am. He was like, that was fun. He goes, it was like a ride. Like I had a lot of fun watching that one. It didn't get under my skin. So even he's like, kind of is in the middle between us and like our significant others who are terrified of stuff like this and would definitely jump around. He's somewhere in the middle. I was like, yeah, I just had fun tonight. Like I don't like, it didn't freak me out at all. So it wasn't scary for me, but it has all the elements of a scary movie. All of them. I mean, the gore, the blood, the guts, the kills, the cringe-inducing, body horror, the deadites. It's all there. There's jump scares. It's got everything you need.
Yeah, I'm gonna slightly disagree and say it is, because a couple things. One, it did make me jump once, which is a rarity. It did get me in that.
I want to see it.
And also the gore is so well orchestrated in this film that it will get a lot of people. It didn't get me in that way, but this is a very creepy and gory film. And I think when you inject the family storyline of the mother going to kill the children, that makes it a little more scary. To me, again, I'm judging for the average moviegoer. I think for the average,
for the average moviegoer, yeah,
this is gonna be a scary film. Now, to your point, though, when I left the theater, I was like, this was awesome. Like, this is a really fun, just nonstop action horror, scary film. Well acted. Just adrenaline dump kind of horror film, and really scary. And again, I love the claustrophobia of being stuck in the apartment trying to keep the deadites out. Love that. Love the concept of it. So much like yourself, I had a blast. Like, I had a blast with this movie. It was fun. But for the average moviegoer, it is brutal. It is gory as hell. And there are some legitimately scary moments, like you mentioned with the tattoo gun, like I mentioned with the jump scare in the hallway, the knife getting plunged into the brother's arm. It's really brutal and close up. So yeah, I would say it is a scary film in that way. And I would argue, outside of Fede Alvarez's film, which I think is the scariest of the entire franchise, I would say this is number 2 in terms of scariest. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's the best in terms of like love the film. I know a lot of people love Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. This one is scary. Like, this one actually has like a real fright factor to it that I would say Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead and Army of Darkness don't have.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I was talking about this with Shrink as well. Those movies, Evil Dead 2 especially, is kind of scarier to me because of something about the format, something about like I always watched it on VHS. It always looked a little gritty and weird, and then there's that uncanniness of like the all the effects of the 1980s. Something about that is weirdly more disturbing than this stuff. This stuff's very slick. It's great. I mean, it's fantastic gore. This is, I don't know how much of it was practical, but it looks very practical. So it's not like anything's bad. It's just very slick. It's very well made. So there's something about it where I'm like, I'm just being presented really good work. And I'm like, man, this looks great. So I'm enjoying it on a different level than I would like an Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I just thought it was a lot of fun. And as you said, a really enjoyable night. I mean, like I said, I am guilty a lot of times of going into horror films when it's a sequel or it's a franchise. And again, I know I'm kind of jokingly crapping on the Halloween Ends movie,
Mm-hmm.
but I do go in sometimes with a little unrealistic expectations one way or the other. I'll either go in thinking, man, I don't think this is going to be good. Like when I saw the Child's Play remake, which I was fully right about that one. That was a pile of dog shit. Uh, and then, like I said, when I went in to see Halloween Ends, I was like, man, okay, this is going to be a really epic conclusion. I'm excited. And then it really let me down. And again, I'm blaming myself for that. Evil Dead Rise, I went in with no expectations. I wasn't going in as like, man, I love Evil Dead. I hope this lives up to my expectations. I really hope they do it right. And I wasn't going in thinking, man, I don't like Evil Dead. I'm not a Deadite fan. I'm not a big fan of these films, so I hope it surprises me. I went in very even-tempered. I was like, I just went in to see a horror film. And so I think that really like measured my excitement and enjoyment of this film afterwards because I didn't have expectations one way or the other. Again, I'm guilty of that with franchises. I fully admit that. I did it with Scream 5 and Scream 6. I think both of those films did live up to expectations of what I went in to see. But Halloween Ends is a great example of a recent film where I went in thinking, man, I'm really looking forward to this. And then it just, to me, shit the bed. And I left, and again, you didn't like it either. You know what I mean? Like
I
you
didn't.
were like, like you were like a -5, but I was like a -10 walking out of that theater. So I was like, not only did I hate it, but I went in thinking I was going to enjoy it.
Yeah, when you're that dedicated of a fan, you're a hardcore Halloween fan. There are going to be hardcore Evil Dead fans that are going to judge this differently.
Yeah.
You and I came in with even expectations. We didn't go this way or that way in terms of expectations coming in. So we're kind of at an advantage. We kind of come in with that blank slate of like, this isn't like my childhood. It isn't super important that it needs to be done exactly right. You know, like we're eventually going to talk about the Friday the 13th remake and how I felt about that because Friday the 13th is my shit. That's like super emotionally attached to my childhood, so I have very strong emotions about that. But I was there with my buddy who's a diehard Evil Dead person and has been his whole life. He loved it. And I think a lot of people are going to love this movie. I don't think it matters where you are on the scale of Evil Dead. There's a lot to enjoy here.
Yeah, if you really want to go back and just hear me lose my shit, listen to the Nightmare on Elm Street remake podcast because that was one that was a lot of fun of me just being like, I mean, I had zero expectations of that film. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but rewatching it, I was just like angry. I was like, why am I watching this? This is god awful. And
and I had about the joy on my voice was about the same as me getting like 8 hours of dental work. Like what a dark episode that is. It's not like I don't go back going, man, you gotta listen to that episode. I was kind of like, Jesus Christ, we were depressed at the end.
The Nightmare on Elm Street remake podcast is the equivalent of the cheese grater going against your leg for like 2 hours straight. Not because it's bad. I don't want to tell people not to listen to that. It's like that's what our emotions were in that one. That's like the cheese grater was just like constantly going up and down.
It's bad.
It's fair.
Oh,
it's
man.
fair. It's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, folks, we're going to get out of here. Want to say a big thank you, as always, to everyone that tunes in to Rewind of the Living Dead. Make sure you check us out on all of your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and, of course, over on my website, nerdcoremovement.com. And you can also check us out on our new YouTube channel. Just YouTube, search YouTube, Rewind of the Living Dead. You'll find us over there. Please subscribe. We're trying to build that channel. We are late arrivers, but we are now putting every new episode up there. And it actually goes up there first, if I'm being honest. YouTube always goes up a little bit before all the other podcasts. So if you want first access to the podcast, go to YouTube, subscribe there. You'll actually get a little head about a few hours ahead of the actual podcast dropping. So again, for those of you that really like listening to us on the first day, YouTube's the way to do it. If you have questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, feel free to hit us up on any social media network. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. Just search Rewind to the Living Dead, or you can send us an email at rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's livingdead@gmail.com. And you can also hit us up on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
Want to say a big thank you, as always, for everyone tuning into the show. We will see you next week for another edition of Rewind to the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.